If there has ever been a TV channel that has given me so much joy and happiness besides Cartoon Network, it would be its sister channel, Boomerang. I never had Boomerang at home, but I have other relatives that did. Since most of my extended family live in Texas, Boomerang was one of those Texas traditions for me. The bumpers with all the old toys, the old Cartoon Network shorts and music videos, and while not every show I watched was a hit, I still watched them for the sake of it being on Boomerang. Now, my extended families in Texas are on my mom's side. My dad's side of the family lives in Indiana. I didn't watch Boomerang as much there as I did in Texas, and it didn't quite have that same charm. However, there is one memory I had of watching Boomerang in Indiana, and it's one that I'll never forget. 3 words: Quick Draw McGraw. I recognize Quick Draw from all the bumpers and even the shorts, one of my favorites being the stylized El Kabong short. But there was one time, and only one time, where I actually caught reruns of the Quick Draw McGraw Show. For those who don't know, the Quick Draw McGraw Show is a series produced by Hanna-Barbera Productions and premiered on syndication on September 28, 1959. After the show ended in 1961, reruns have been moved to several different channels, with its most recent airings being on Cartoon Network in the early 2000s and Boomerang in the early 2010s. The show itself was similar to the Huckleberry Hound show, in that it had 3 different segments starring certain characters. We have the first segment starring Quick Draw McGraw and his sidekick Babalooey. The second segment stars Augie Doggy and his father Doggy Daddy, and the last segment stars Snooper and his bumbling assistant Blabber. I don't recall ever watching Augie and Snooper though. I think by that point Boomerang was airing the segments as separate shows. After I saw Quick Draw on Boomerang, I pretty much forgot all about my interest, yet the characters in those memories still lived on. Fast forward a decade and Chowder creator C.H. Greenblatt made a quirky show called Jellystone. It wasn't something I was looking forward to at first. A trailer did eventually release and it grew on me a bit, but then it came out on HBO Max and man, it is such a great show. I'll talk more about the overall show later in the video, but one of the things I liked the most about the show was that it actually made me want to do some research on these characters. So while I grew up with Boomerang, I haven't really seen much of these characters outside of the shorts and groovies. I was more into the 90s Cartoon Network shows like the Powerpuff Girls and Dexter's Laboratory. So while I did love most of the characters on Jellystone, I kinda wanted to go back to their original shows just to see what they were like back then. Obviously I knew who Yogi Bear, Huckleberry Hound, and Secret Squirrel were, but I had no clue who Loopy the Loop or Winsome Witch were. Others like Jabberjaw and Squiddly Diddly I only knew from cameos and stuff outside of their original shows. So after becoming fans of characters like Augie Doggy and El Kabong, I wanted to revisit the Quick Draw McGraw Show since it's been so long since I've seen it. But unlike the other shows where they had at least some home video or streaming release, it was really difficult for me to find the Quick Draw Show. Because believe it or not, there are currently no DVD or Blu-ray releases of the Quick Draw McGraw Show. Are you kidding me? Because I wanted to watch the show so badly, I downloaded all the episodes off of Internet Archive, and now I'm in the process of burning all the episodes on DVD-R discs. So far, I burned 4 discs that contain the complete first season, and they were just as good as I remembered. Honestly, I think the Quick Draw McGraw Show is really worth checking out. Despite a few cultural stereotypes, I'd say the show really holds up. So how is this show not widely available? It's a shame that there is yet to be a proper DVD release of the show, and do you know what the worst part is? We almost got one! In 2006, Warner Home Media announced that they were going to release some sort of DVD set for both the Quick Draw McGraw Show and Wally Gator. However, both sets got cancelled. Not only were the master tapes in poor condition and would have needed lengthy restoration, but there also seems to be licensing issues with some of the show's music. The licensed music part, that actually does make some sense. I did recognize some of the stock music from SpongeBob and Camp Lazlo, so maybe the royalties of the stock music used in the show would have been too expensive. We did eventually get those Saturday morning cartoon DVDs that included 4 episodes of the show's 3rd season, but it still sucks that Quick Draw has yet to see the light of day on home media. But the problem with its availability doesn't limit to just DVDs. Not a single streaming service has this show. Even Boomerang's very own streaming service doesn't have it, which is even crazier considering how well represented it was on old Boomerang. So yeah, there is no way to watch Quick Draw on disc, no way to stream it, and no channel is airing it right now. Both Cartoon Network and Boomerang haven't aired the show in decades. And while there could be a good chance that they could someday re-air it on MeTV like the Flintstones and Jetsons, it just doesn't seem very likely for the time being. And it's crazy to believe how hard it is to find Quick Draw McGraw nowadays, especially compared to more obscure shows that did get DVD releases. Wally Gator, one of the shows that initially got its DVD cancelled, eventually got a complete series set in 2019, yet Quick Draw still hasn't gotten one yet. Lippy the Lion and Hardy Har Har also recently got DVD release. Does anyone even recognize or even care about these two? Where's Quick Draw McGraw? Even the Pac-Man series got its own DVD sets. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the old Pac-Man series, and I'm grateful that we even have these sets to begin with. But the fact that Warner Bros. Was able to make a deal with Bandai Namco to release this show on DVD before they could bother with Quick Draw McGraw is pretty baffling. I find it insane how Warner Bros. Will choose any Hanna-Barbera show to release on DVD but the Quick Draw McGraw show. Like, this is just unacceptable. Look, I think there are many shows that deserve a complete series DVD/Blu-ray release. Camp Lazlo, Phineas and Ferb, The Muppet Show. However, the Quick Draw McGraw show, despite not being one of my all-time favorites, is my most wanted show for a complete series release. And here are my 4 reasons why Warner Bros. Needs to make a complete series set for the Quick Draw McGraw show, ASAP. Number 1, and this one is obvious, preservation. I am pretty much a hoarder. I like to preserve some of the media that I love, regardless of whether or not my interest is big. It does annoy my parents since I do have a habit of leaving stuff out open for no reason, especially whenever I buy a new DVD or Blu-ray, but the thing is, I like preserving things because I want to have my interest be with me until I die. All these characters, all these shows, films, toys, they all shaped who I am as a person, and I always try my best not to forget them. Otherwise, this channel would have never existed. All the stuff I collect are like memories I had with things related to the item. They all represent my personal interests and my overall childhood. For example, I cherish my original Rob the Robot since he's one of my favorite Smash Bros. Characters. The Mario Kart 64 Mario action figure and cart remind me of those precious memories of me and my brother playing Mario Kart 64 as kids. My entire DVD and Blu-ray collection pretty much sums up the kind of person I am, and how I'll always cherish them. People probably think the same way with their own collectibles too. Maybe they feel the same about a car, a utensil, a purse, maybe their pet. The things we love shape the way we are as people, and we hate to lose these things. It's like a part of us has either died or grown up. I had memories watching Quick Draw on TV, thus some sort of DVD release would reflect those memories. But the problem is, there's no official release of the show anywhere. How would I be able to remember my enjoyment of the show if I can't have access to all the episodes? I'm sure others out there probably grew up watching Quick Draw more than I ever did, but what would happen if the show they loved growing up is just not available to be purchased or streamed legally? Without all those reruns that people recorded back in the day, the Quick Draw show would have been close to becoming lost media, which I'm glad it never happened. Number 2. Quick Draw himself is still around. You can still find the show's characters, mainly Quick Draw, in modern animated media. Quick Draw has made a cameo in the 2017 Wacky Races reboot. In the Animaniacs 2020 reboot, the Suffrage City segment featured Dot Warner trying to get the cartoon characters the right to vote. She convinced many Warner Bros. Stars to fight for their rights, including Augie Doggie and Doggy Daddy. In Teen Titans Go's his new special celebrating Warner Bros.' 100th anniversary, Quick Draw McGraw is one of the characters we see with all the other IPs. Probably the most prominent 21st century appearance of the Quick Draw McGraw characters would probably be their reoccurring roles on Jellystone. Overall, I think Jellystone is a fantastic show, and I think they did a great job bringing the characters back to the public conscience, even if some people might find some of the changes unnecessary. In the series, Quick Draw McGraw is always seen in his El Kabong persona, and is referred to as such, which is fine by me since I always liked him the best as El Kabong. He is both a part-time school teacher and a part-time hero. I find the Jellystone version of El Kabong to be a really great character and a favorite of mine. While he is a bit more competent than the original, he's still the same silly horse we all know and love. Baba Looey is one of those more interesting characters who is a complete departure from the original. They turned him into a businesswoman and is well spoken. Also, for some reason, they changed her name to Bobby Looey. Nevertheless, I don't mind her character. I mean, she's pretty good, but she's not one of my favorites. Augie Doggie is Jellystone's best character, and my personal favorite. I love the high-spirited nature of Augie, she has some of the best dialogue in the show, and her dynamic with Doggy Daddy is a lot more fun and entertaining. I know some people take issue with the fact that Augie has a vagina now, but honestly, I prefer the father-daughter dynamic Augie and Daddy have in the show than I ever did in the original. Also, as someone who's seen enough of the original Augie cartoons, I can pretty much say that she's exactly the same character as she was in the original. Personality is pretty much identical, and despite being heavily stylized, it's the same design just with eyelashes. In fact, her character in Jellystone alone was the reason I bought this plush of Augie. Doggy Daddy is a bit more overprotective than he was in the original. Snooper and Blabber also make appearances on this show, though not as much as the other characters. They made cameos in the Halloween special, and they even got a minor role in a Season 2 episode. Hopefully we'll be able to see more of them in the future. It's been over a year since we've gotten any new episodes of Jellystone. I really hope the show isn't quietly cancelled or anything, because I think the show does a really great job reimagining the Hanna-Barbera characters while also bringing something fresh to the table. Because before Jellystone, the Hanna-Barbera universe had been really lackluster. Ever since the studio went defunct and absorbed into Warner Bros. Animation, I feel like Warner Bros. Didn't know what to do with its characters. They always seem to do this shtick where they make the characters edgy and inappropriate to try and appeal to adults who probably grew up with them. And in my opinion, it just makes the characters look tacky and uncalled for. This trope technically started with Cartoon Network's Space Ghost Coast to Coast, but I think it was actually done right. Not only is it a fun parody of Space Ghost, it also pays tribute to the original show as well without feeling like an insult. Despite appealing to adults, it's pretty tame compared to other examples I'll mention. I'll always enjoy Coast to Coast, and I really wish it and the Brak Show were still on Max. However, my feelings on Adult Swim's Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, are a little mixed, and I personally think it's the one that truly started the stupid make these kids characters do dirty things trope. Now, I'm not saying this show is bad by any means. I think it's a really clever and funny show. However, I do find some of the Hanna-Barbera characters to be represented in the least flattering way. Call me old softy, but I just really didn't enjoy watching Top Cat getting neutered or Doggy Daddy being aggressively tortured by Phil.
Ow! What the hell? Scrat mat. Teaches you not to sit on the furniture.
But it's my recliner! I have the receipt for it right here!
I honestly can't tell if the characters in the show are meant to be parodies or the actual characters. The way some characters are presented makes me think they're parody versions of the characters. I mean, the episode that featured the Jetsons had them struggling to walk in Birdman's office, even though they had no trouble walking in their own show. Not only that, but they got the Jetsons' year date wrong. The Jetsons series takes place in 2062, but in Harvey Birdman, George claims that they're from the futuristic year of 2002. While yes, they probably did these inaccuracies just to satirize the original show and to make the jokes funny, which is fine, it was a really funny episode. But as a huge Jetsons fan, it kinda bothers me how wrong they got the source material. But on the other hand, the on-model character designs makes it feel like they're supposed to be the actual characters from their original family-friendly shows, despite some of the characters acting the way they aren't supposed to, or being treated in a more tasteless way than usual. Despite these personal problems, I still think Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law is a really good show, and worth checking out if you have a Max subscription. However, while I hate to admit this since I really like the show, I do think it had some sort of negative impact on the Hanna-Barbera universe. Since ever since Attorney at Law came out, Warner Bros. Would keep making these characters more inappropriate and out of character. For example, they thought it would be a good idea to have John Kay make shorts based on Yogi Bear and the Jetsons, and I'm sorry, but his style of humor just doesn't work with these characters. He also seemed to have made them out of spite. I haven't seen the Yogi Bear shorts he did, but I have seen the Flash shorts he did on the Jetsons, and they were awful. Father and Son Day was okay, but the gross out humor just doesn't work for the Jetsons. And for the love of God, why is Elroy naked at the end of the shorts? The Best Son is honestly the worst thing to ever come out of the Jetsons franchise. For some reason, they made Elroy a troublemaker and George and Jane abusive parents who even replaced their own son with a robot. Like, seriously. Sure, Elroy did get into trouble in the original show, but he was never malicious. And the George and Jane I know love their son very much, and they would never replace their own child with a robot. Why do they have to make them so mean and shouty? I mean, George literally talks about his regret of having a son in front of his own son.
You monster! You beast!
That's it! We're getting rid of them! I'm getting one of those newfangled robot kids.
Oh, you mean one of those that obeys all your commands?
Yep, and they go to bed on time, and they treat the parents with respect.
Like, I expect this type of attitude from the Get Along Gang cartoon, not the freaking Jetsons. And all of this just to make these kid-friendly characters seem all edgy and cool. In the Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy episode, Here There Be Dwarves, Yogi Bear and Boo Boo make minor appearances. However, they both look really messed up and are implied to be drug addicts. On one hand, the scene with them is really funny, and on par with the show's hilarious humor.
I know you're close, you dirty human!
Hey, I'm not dirty, I just had a bath 15 days ago!
But on the other hand, I kinda dislike the fact that they had to make them druggies. I mean, seriously, look at Boo Boo. They're also afraid of caves for some reason, despite the fact that they actually live in one. Also, the part where Boo Boo says, "Why are we so lame, Yogi?" makes it feel like the crew was disrespecting the characters for being old and dated. A little ironic considering that Jellystones' C.H. Greenblatt was one of the writers on this episode. At least the other episodes that had these Hanna-Barbera cameos were a lot more tasteful. Top Cat Begins is a movie that exists for some reason. I've never seen it myself, it looks awful. But despite being a family film, at some point TC dropped an F-bomb, but since it's a family show, it's bleeped out in the English dub.
I really should have thought of a better line. The Friends thing was kind of cheesy. Oh, I know. Hey, Mr. Big!
Come on TC, not in front of Benny. Look, I am not offended by bleeped out swearing in a kid's film, but as someone who hasn't seen the film, was there any reason for TC to drop some sort of F-bomb like that? Does it serve any real purpose to the film's story? I just find it completely unnecessary and uncalled for. And again, it's part of that stupid trope where they make the Hanna-Barbera characters do adult things just because they can. The Banana Splits got their very own movie in 2019, but it has absolutely nothing to do with the original show. For some reason, they made it a horror movie and made the characters murdering robots. Like, why? I'm not much of a Banana Splits fan, but since when were the characters murdering robots instead of costume characters? Warner Bros. Has also done this trope with the Flintstones, however, I give them a pass since the original show was intended for adults to begin with. Examples include The Rubbles, a short series on Cartoon Network in Latin America, as well as the upcoming Fox series Bedrock. Honestly, I don't mind the Flintstones wanting to go back to their original adult roots, however, it doesn't mean that the characters should be cussing a lot or doing super risque things. Even Scooby-Doo is not safe from this stupid trope, with Velma being the absolute worst example of this trope so far. The reason why I mostly hate this trope of making these kids' characters do edgy and adult things, especially with Hanna-Barbera, is because it's just not who the characters are. Sure, theoretically, an adult version of Scooby-Doo and Top Cat can work. The problem is that the people that made these projects seem to miss the point of these characters and their appeal. Sure, animation isn't strictly for kids, but it's not strictly for adults either. Hanna-Barbera's characters were special in that they could be enjoyed by people of all ages. They're meant to be good, innocent fun. They can still have their edge and sometimes have adult jokes, but they were subtle about it, and these moments weren't full-on inappropriate. However, making these kid-friendly characters do dirty things to appeal to nostalgic adults is not my only beef I have with the Hanna-Barbera universe since the studio's closure. Another problem is the fact that they always seem to hire the wrong people to revive these characters, and this example is more apparent with the film adaptations of Hanna-Barbera's IPs. Now, I really enjoy Hey There, Yogi Bear, The Man Called Flintstone, Jetsons the Movie, and the live-action Flintstones movie with John Goodman. However, the following films that came out since the awful Flintstones and Viva Rock Vegas have been either terrible to mediocre at best. While some Scooby fans might say otherwise, I didn't like how out of character and mean-spirited a 2002 Scooby-Doo film can sometimes be. It's not get-along gang levels of bad or anything, but some of the humor and characterizations just didn't do it for me. I haven't seen its 2004 sequel in a very long time, but maybe the sequel's a lot better. Yogi Bear was kinda forgettable. The characters were bland, Ranger Smith didn't wear his hat for most of the film, and speaking of him, the film focused more on him rather than Yogi himself. And what happened to Cindy Bear? She's a pretty important character to the overall Yogi franchise. You're telling me you couldn't find a way to incorporate her into the movie? This movie got so much poor reception that it pretty much killed hope for any future Yogi Bear projects until Jellystone. Scoob is not a terrible movie by any means, but it just doesn't feel like Scooby-Doo. Scooby-Doo Where Are You was all about mystery solving, but there was barely any in the film's story. I also found the references to things like Walmart, IKEA, and Netflix to be a bit distracting and weren't all that funny. Okay, maybe the IKEA joke was pretty decent, but still, this film is also stunt casting at its worst. Now, my dad loves Will Forte, and I think Will Forte is a great actor. I liked him in Clone High, and especially on Saturday Night Live. But just like every comedian, they're bound to have at least one dud performance, and his role as Shaggy is one of them. In my opinion, Will Forte was not a good Shaggy. He barely sounds like him. Hell, even the kid that voiced young Shaggy in the beginning of the film would have made a better Shaggy than him. However, I think the overall movie wasn't too terrible though. I think the first 15 minutes of the film where the Mystery Inc. are kids were actually good. I also like the overall idea of a cinematic universe for Hanna-Barbera. Something like that has so much potential given the many properties from HB. Sadly, Scoob just didn't deliver in its execution, and since the holiday special they were planning on making got cancelled due to tax write-offs, I don't think we'll ever get to see this Hanna-Barbera cinematic universe fully realized anytime soon. The problem with all these post-closure films is similar to the make the characters super naughty trope. They either miss the point of the characters and their personalities, or they try way too hard to replicate the source material without properly adapting them for a cinematic experience. This has always been a problem with Hanna-Barbera films before this, but in my eyes, the ones after Viva Rock Vegas were the worst offenders. It's not that the people weren't trying or anything, they just don't seem to quite understand the characters all that much. They always seem to desperately try to make the characters hip with today's kids, even if it means sacrificing what made the characters beloved. Not only that, but there was this really stupid trend where Warner Bros. Made DVD movies that crossed over certain Hanna-Barbera properties with WWE of all things. Like, really? What does the Flintstones have anything to do with WWE? While I'm sure they weren't all that bad, the Flintstones one was alright. They felt more like cash grabs than anything else. They just don't seem to hold up as well as their source materials.
What can we do? We're just people. People can't do anything.
Also, there hadn't been that many major Flintstones projects for years at the time Stone Age SmackDown was released, and the Jetsons hadn't had a major project since the theatrical movie at the time. So how do you revisit these characters after so long? One-off wrestling movies. Like, we'll make something new with these characters by teaming them up with WWE wrestlers, and then we'll never do anything with these characters again for a while. I know this isn't completely true with the Flintstones and Scooby-Doo, but the fact that Warner Bros. Hasn't done anything major with the Jetsons since 2017 is such a shame. This is why Jellystone is such a breath of fresh air, because it feels like the only modern cartoon that completely understands its source materials more than any other post-closure project. Most of the characters feel more like themselves than they ever did before. Even with the characters that had the more drastic changes, they weren't represented in a disrespectful manner like Velma and the Spumco shorts did. Sure, some people might not be fond of Jabberjaw's vagina, but these major changes don't ruin the characters in a way that some of the feature films do. C.H. Greenblatt grew up watching Hanna-Barbera as much as others his age did, so he really knew what he was doing with the characters and the stories he wanted to tell. However, he never wanted it to be a complete nostalgia show. He never wanted to fully copy or emulate the original HB shows. He just wanted to make a fun, silly show with these existing characters. And in a way, these characters sort of went back to their original roots. While it doesn't necessarily mean we're out of the age of the characters being tacky and inappropriate, or trying to be hip with modern audiences, the excellence of Jellystone makes me hope that we'll be in some sort of modern Hanna-Barbera renaissance soon. So before I ranted on the current state of Hanna-Barbera, I talked about how the Quick Draw characters still appear in modern shows, whether it be as characters on Jellystone, or as cameos on both Animaniacs 2020 and Teen Titans Go. So how is it that these characters are still being used by Warner Bros. Despite the fact that they won't release their original show on Blu-ray or Max? Not only do the characters still appear in modern media, but there's still merchandise made of at least Quick Draw, mainly from Funko, who will pretty much make anything Hanna-Barbera for their character lines. They made pops of both Quick Draw and Baba Looey, as well as vinyls of the two. There's also a figurine from a Warner Bros. Blind Box series. That thing is very rare for some reason. And most recently, there's a soda can figure of Quick Draw McGraw, with the rare Chase figure being him in his El Kabong attire. Funko even has a new character line, called Rewind, which is pretty much the same concept as the soda cans, only this time the packaging are clamshell VHS cases. And while there currently isn't a Quick Draw McGraw figure in that line, it's very likely that they'll eventually make one, given that they've currently made Huckleberry Hound, Dick Dastardly, and a few Scooby-Doo characters. So if Quick Draw McGraw is still relevant in pop culture, why is it still not on DVD or streaming? You'd think they would have solved the music issues by now. If Quick Draw is still relevant in today's modern audience and market, then I'm pretty sure a DVD or Blu-ray release would sell decently well. I mean, what if there was a kid who recently got into Jellystone and wanted to use the show for their research project? What if El Kabong was their favorite Jellystone character and wanted to make him their focus of their project? But doing so would be pretty difficult if they can't legally find the original show he's from. Yes, I know El Kabong has appeared in shows like Yogi's Gang, Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, and even those Cartoon Network and Boomerang shorts and Groovies, but it was the original Quick Draw McGraw show that made him such a household name. Number 3. Daws Butler. Now, if you know your Hanna-Barbera, you 100% know who Daws Butler is. If there's a show produced by Hanna-Barbera Productions, chances are Butler's in it. He's famous for voicing characters like Huckleberry Hound, Mr. Jinx, Yogi Bear, Elroy Jetson, Hokey Wolf, Peter Potamus, Wally Gator. He was even Barney Rubble a few times, and Top Cat at least once. Saying he was the Mel Blanc of Hanna-Barbera would be an understatement. He did so many great performances, and he well deserves that title. Though out of all the Hanna-Barbera shows he's done, I think the Quick Draw McGraw show was his best performance out of any cartoon. Even though the show did have some great actors like Don Messick, Doug Young, and Gene Vanderpyle, it was Daws Butler who in my opinion really sold the show. Maybe it's because he does like 90% of all the characters, or maybe he was just given a lot of funny writing to work with. But either way, I just can't help but praise Daws Butler's performance in the show. Since he does about 90% of all the characters, most of the voices he's done are pretty unique. Not only that, but he also does some pretty convincing female voices, despite the show having some female talents like Gene Vanderpyle. If we're talking about certain characters, Daws Butler is amazing as Quick Draw. He has a really funny voice that I sometimes can't help but chuckle whenever he says his famous lines, "No, hold on there, and don't you forget it!" And the way the Quick Draw segments were written makes both the character and Baba Looey such enjoyable characters. And let's not forget about Quick Draw's cooler alter ego, El Kabong! If the Quick Draw segments were great satires of Western TV, then the El Kabong related segments were great satires of Disney's Zorro. It is funny whenever El Kabong yells out, "Kabong!" every time he's about to hit a bad guy with his guitar. It's silly and ridiculous, which is what makes the overall show so amazing. Speaking of Baba Looey, he is such a sweetheart. He's the voice of reason and usually warns Quick Draw about the potential dangers, to which Quick Draw usually ignores, though karma would eventually bite him in the butt. The Quick Draw segments wouldn't be as great as they are without Baba Looey. He's always there to help Quick Draw, and he's sometimes the one who usually stops the bad guy. For some reason, their dynamic reminds me a lot of Inspector Gadget. I mean, think about it. Quick Draw McGraw is well-meaning, but sometimes incompetent, similar to Inspector Gadget, while Baba Looey is the smart one who usually stops the bad guys like Penny. I don't know, it must be me who thinks this. Before I start talking about the characters from other segments, I just gotta talk about Snuffles, who actually might be the best character in the Quick Draw segments. The whole joke of this character is that he always begs for a dog biscuit, and it's hilarious whenever he goes, "Ah, ah, ah, ah." And whenever Quick Draw gives him a dog biscuit, he always hugs himself while going, "Mmm, mmm, 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 mmm." And then he jumps and floats his way down. Like, it's such a stupid running gag, but in a good way. And we have Daws Butler to thank since he voiced all of Snuffles' sounds. Now we get to Augie Doggy from Augie Doggy and Doggy Daddy. While I do prefer Georgie Kidder's take on the character in Jellystone, her performance wouldn't be nearly as great if it weren't for Daws Butler's original voice. I think Augie was a kid character way ahead of its time. I think he is a perfect example of how kids are much smarter than what adults take him credit for. Because for an 11-year-old, he knows how to invent and tinker with things. Sort of like Tails in a way. He seems to be a lot more forgiving towards others compared to Doggy Daddy, who I do find to be a bit of a jerk sometimes. He's even kind of a dick to his own son. While he still loves Daddy, he's not afraid to tell and scold him whenever his dear old dad starts acting like a jerk, even if his dad usually doesn't listen to him at first. I can also relate to Augie since he's shown to have a lot of interests like I do. She even carries on that trait in Jellystone. Daws Butler was fantastic as Augie, and even him alone is the reason why Augie is one of my all-time favorite Hanna-Barbera characters. Now, with Snooper and Blabber, they pretty much exist. Similar to how he voices both Quick Draw and Baba Looey, Daws Butler also provides the voices of both Snooper and Blabber. Although there were a few episodes where someone else was Blabber, but besides that, he was pretty much Butler's character. Snooper is the more intelligent of the duo and is more competent, while Bladder is Snoop's assistant, who worships him. While I kinda like Snoop a little more, I actually relate to Blab the most. Sometimes in their segments, Snooper would tell Blabber to do something, only for Blab to make a mistake and get yelled at by Snoop. This pretty much happens to me all the time. As a visual learner, my brain will sometimes get confused whenever my mom or someone else asks me to do something. But under all that pressure, I tend to either not do as I'm told or do something else, which extremely annoys everyone, especially my parents. In fact, as someone on the spectrum myself, I kinda wonder if Blabber might be autistic. While I'm a much bigger fan of the Quick Draw and Augie episodes, the Snooper and Blabber episodes are pretty charming, and they have their funny moments. And Daws Butler was just as good as these two, as he was with the other characters. Daws Butler was such an amazing person, and one of the most highly talented voice actors of many generations. I don't think he ever had a bad voiceover role. Even if he was in a bad cartoon, I'm sure his voice performance would have still been as fantastic as always. And to me, the Quick Draw McGraw Show was kind of like his magnum opus. The Quick Draw Show does a great job at showing how wonderful Daws Butler's voice acting skills were, considering he voiced about 90% of the characters on the show. And I don't think the show would have been nearly as good if Butler wasn't in it. Same goes for Don Messick and Doug Young. It's really sad that not a lot of people will hear Butler's amazing acting skills, since Warner Bros. Won't release the show on DVD or Tubi. It feels like a disservice to Daws and the other great voice talents that worked on the show. I just hate for all of Daws Butler's great voice work to become lost to time, since he and the other actors delivered some really funny jokes. Which leads me to my fourth and final reason. Number 4. It's such an underrated gem. I personally find the Quick Draw McGraw Show to be such a great cartoon, and was way ahead of its time. In fact, after watching new episodes of Disney Channel's Kif, I noticed how some of the show's humor reminds me so much of the ones from the Quick Draw Show. The show was never afraid to poke fun at Western tropes, and even the way people were portrayed. If we're talking just the quick draw segments, while women are often shown as helpless or damsels, it is done in a tongue-in-cheek way, such as in the segment Chopping Spree, where the character of Peachy Blossom is literally referred to as a typical helpless lonely lumber queen, both from narration and in universe. They weren't trying to be sexist or anything, but rather poke fun at how sexist these types of tropes were. That's where the typical part in her description comes from. The show is very self-aware of its characters and their actions, which is what makes the show really funny. While I already mentioned Daws Butler before, I still have to mention the fact that he and the other voice actors are also a factor as to why the show is so great. They put all their greatest efforts into these characters. I think their performances are a factor as to why I think the show is well written. It's like the actors gave the dialogue a little kick to make the jokes and gags even funnier. I think there is lots of fun to be had with Quick Draw McGraw, Augie Doggy, and Snooper and Blabber. I personally would recommend the Quick Draw McGraw show to anyone regardless of age. Sure, it's not perfect by any means. There are a couple stereotypes that were commonplace at the time, however since the show is from 1959, that's to be expected, but it's still something to keep in mind when watching the series. I also noticed that the show tends to use guns a lot, especially in the quick draw segments. Even in the days of Saturday morning cartoons, parents used to complain about shows like Quick Draw for showing so much violence to children. This was one of the reasons why a lot of cartoons from the early to mid 80s played things super safe. However, in the show's defense, the Quick Draw McGraw show never promoted the use of firearms, nor encouraged kids to use them. Quick Draw is pretty careless when it comes to gun use, and he is often seen shot in the face many times from outlaws. In the Augie Doggy segment, Watchdog Augie, we see Augie using his dear old dad's shotgun after seeing a burglar outside his home. Of course, he is shown shooting it. While yes, it's meant to be very comical, however, Augie is constantly using the shotgun even after shooting the burglar, as well as his very own father, who he mistakes for the burglar. I think the segment teaches a good lesson in how kids could be careless with guns without the proper gun safety. But it doesn't paint Augie as being bad or mischievous, since not only is he just a sweet innocent puppy, but he was also just trying to protect his home and his father, since a burglar is involved in the story. I also did find some of the gags to be predictable, which isn't really the show's fault since a lot of cartoons since then also use the same gags to the point where they even become widely used TV tropes. Sure, the show might not be for everyone, but I overall find the Quick Draw McGraw show to have aged pretty well. Because of the sake of preservation, its impact on modern media, Daws Butler, and the overall quality of the show, I think it's finally time for Warner Bros. To actually do something about the licensing issues and get the Quick Draw McGraw show back into the public consciousness. Let's finally have a complete series on DVD, or better yet, Blu-ray. Not only that, but let's also have it available to stream, whether it be on Max, Boomerang, or Tubi. Stream the show for once. Or heck, for those who probably still have cable, give MeTV the license to air reruns of the show. Or even better, bring the show back to Boomerang like they so willingly do with Jabberjaw and the Flintstones kids. Coming back to Jellystone, C.H. Greenblatt has once said in an interview that he never made the show in order to replace what came before, but rather the existence of the show would give hope that Hanna-Barbera's library will one day become more widely available. If this show gets a big enough following, which it rightfully deserves, maybe this means we'll finally be able to see the return of the original Quick Draw McGraw show. It may take decades, maybe even after we're dead, but whatever happens to us, the characters will still be out there somewhere. Somewhere for a future generation of kids and adults to find and enjoy.